When Siddhartha Gautama was born, his father consulted a sage who told him that his son would either grow up to be a king or an important religious figure. His father did not want him to grow up to be a religious figure, so he kept Siddhartha sheltered from the horrors of the world within the family's many opulent palaces. One day, Siddhartha's curiosity as to what was beyond the palace became too great, and he decided that he would have to leave to explore it. Upon leaving his palace, Siddhartha observed four sights in which he had never seen before: an old man, which revealed that all people aged; a person who was sick, which taught him that all people are subject to illness; a dead body, which taught Siddhartha that all people eventually die; and an ascetic. The ascetic was most important to Siddhartha because he showed him that he was working to realize the cause of human suffering. This sight forever changed his life because it caused him to realize that he too wanted to realize the cause of human suffering. With that, Siddhartha decided to become an ascetic. He spent the next several years or so depriving him so much that it is said that he sustained himself off simply 1 grain of rice a day. After that period of several years, Siddhartha realized that he was no closer to reaching enlightenment, even though he had been an extremely devout ascetic for such a long period of time. With that realization, he ate a good meal and decided that he would sit down beneath a Bodhi tree to meditate until he could answer the question of human suffering and achieve enlightenment. Siddhartha achieves this goal and reaches enlightenment. While Siddhartha was an ascetic, he traveled with 5 other ascetics who left him once they saw him indulge in the pleasure of eating. After Siddhartha reaches enlightenment, he wanders the countryside. In his wanderings one day, he comes upon the 5 ascetics that abandoned him. What ensues is known as the Deer Park Sermon. It is the first sermon that Siddhartha ever gives. In it, Siddhartha explains to his followers the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. In the years that follow, Siddhartha traveled Asia, spreading his truths and gaining a following. One of the most unique things that he created with Buddhism was that any person could reach enlightenment, no matter your social ranking. The question I was asked for the rituals theme was, how does ritual shape daily life? I was to answer this question in relation to Dharma Day, Losar, and Sangha Day, all religious festivals associated with Buddhism. The term Dharma refers to the teaching of the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. Dharma Day is a celebration of when the Buddha began his teaching at the Sermon of Deer Park. Dharma Day is celebrated by reading from Buddhist scriptures and allowing for followers of the religion to reflect on their meeting. The festival of Losar is also known as the Tibetan New Year. It is a 3-day ceremony that is celebrated by prayers, ceremonies, hanging prayer flags, sacred and folk dancing, and partying. In preparation for Losar, the 8 auspicious symbols are drawn on the walls of households and temples in white powder. These symbols are thought to represent offerings that gods made to Siddhartha after he reached enlightenment. They are the parasol, the 2 golden fish, the conch shell, the lotus blossom, the banner of victory, the vase, the Dharma wheel, and the eternal knot. The first day of Losar is known as Lama Losar. This day is reserved for students giving gratitude to his or her Dharma's teacher. The Dalai Lama and other high lamas also gather to make offerings to Dharma protectors or Dharmapalas. The second day of Losar is Gyalpo Loza. It is set aside for honoring community and national leaders. The Dalai Lama meets with officials of the Tibetan government. The third and final day of this festival is Keo Kyong Losar. On this day, people make offerings to Dharma protectors, hang prayer flags, and chant, as well as sing songs to ask for blessings. The festival known as Sangha Day is considered to be one of the most important Buddhist festivals. The word Sangha is used to describe the community of Buddhist monks and nuns. Sangha Day commemorates the gathering of 1,250 monks to hear the Buddha speak at Veluvana Vihara. Here, Buddha laid out the Patimokkha, or the rules of the monastic order. The purpose of Sangha Day is to get Buddhists to celebrate the idea of the spiritual community in which they live in. It can be celebrated through chanting, meditation, and lighting oil lamps. The festivals of Dharma Day, Losar, and Sangha help to show how ritual shapes daily life in the way that festivals are a reminder of what Buddhists should keep in mind every day. An analogy between Buddhism and Christianity would be how Christianity has holidays such as Christmas and Easter. These are there to remind followers of the Christian religion how Jesus died on the cross and how he was reborn. Dharma Day, Losar, and Sangha Day serve to remind followers to pray, reflect, and celebrate the Buddhist community. These should happen every day, but oftentimes don't, so the festivals serve as a subtle reminder. An important scripture in the Theravada sect of Buddhism is known as the Pali Canon or Tripitaka. The scripture can be broken down into three smaller subscriptures known as the Vinayana Pitaka, Sutta Pitaka, and the Abhidharma Pitaka. The Tripitaka is a collection of teachings from the Buddha and is also known as the Three Baskets. It is a collection of rules of discipline for Buddhist monks and nuns, as well as a body of texts meant to further one's knowledge, causing it to also be known as the Great Teaching Basket. Three versions of the Tripitaka survive. One in the Pali language, more commonly studied by Southern Buddhists, and two Mahayana versions in China and Tibet, more commonly studied in the North. An extremely important Mahayana scripture is known as the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra, sutra meaning sacred writing, states that Buddhahood is present in all life. Buddhahood is the condition of happiness and freedom from illusion. However, people need to work to develop this inner state so that they can overcome their issues and live a fulfilling life. It is unique in the way that it does not stress the need to detest earthly pleasures in the way that many other sutras do. Instead, since it is based around the idea of Buddhahood, it teaches that one must look upon the world and learn from it. This is an example of how Buddhism stretches the middle way in life. The Lotus Sutra is also unique in the way that it makes enlightenment open to all people and does not discriminate based upon gender, race, social standing, or education as other sutras do. An important Vajrayana scripture is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Also known as the Bardo Thodol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead was written by Padma Sambhava in the 8th century. It is a guide for the dead during the time that is between death and rebirth. The process between death and rebirth takes 7 weeks according to the Bardo Thodol. It is to be read aloud to the dead in order for them to recognize the true nature of their mind and attain liberation from the cycle of rebirth. The Bardo Thodol outlines 3 bardos, or stages of life that occur after death, that all people travel through after they die. The first bardo occurs at death, and it is said to be the very essence of enlightenment. Only if the dying can figure out how to stay this way in that state. Most people cannot do this due to their karma, however. The second bardo lasts for 2 weeks and is broken into 2 parts. The first is known as the peaceful deities, and the second is known as the wrathful deities. The third bardo, where the death is rebirthed, is where the death is rebirthed. Against the urgings of the Bardo Thodol, the dying enters a new womb where he is rebirthed. This womb is chosen by the dead according to their karma. Having good karma will land them in a favorable rebirth, and having bad karma will land them in the opposite. The other option is for the dying to reach enlightenment in this bardo. Buddhists believe that the human condition is as follows. Humans are caught in samsara, which is the endless cycle of death and rebirth. Each time they are rebirthed, the karma that they have amassed from their previous life is the only thing that carries over with them to determine their personalities and decide where they are born to. The cycle of samsara is characterized by maya, which is illusion, tanha, which is craving, and dukkha, which is suffering. Living in samsara and experiencing maya, tanha, and dukkha are thought to be unavoidable until enlightenment is reached. They believe that there are 4 different paths in which we are traveling towards in life. First, a favorable rebirth after death from building up good karma in the previous life should be achieved. Another path that one will try to travel is to achieve enlightenment through entering nirvana. Buddhists are also traveling towards Buddhahood, which is the state of perfect enlightenment achieved by Buddha, also known as being awakened. Buddhahood is described in the Lotus Sutra. Finally, Buddhists are traveling towards Bodhisattvahood, which is the enlightenment for the benefit of all living things. In order to reach these 4 goals, Buddhists must do several things. For one, they need to accept the 3 jewels: Buddha, which can either refer to the historical Buddha or one's highest spiritual level that they can reach; Dharma, the path to enlightenment through the teaching of the Buddha; and Sangha, the community of those who are practicing Buddhism and attempting to achieve enlightenment. Second, one must follow the 4 noble truths as laid out by the Buddha: the truth that life is suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the end of suffering, and the truth of the path that frees us from suffering. To achieve one of the 4 goals, Buddhists must also follow the middle way. This is accomplished by living on neither one of the extremities of life, that of a devout ascetic, or that of one who's completely driven by worldly possessions and desires. Instead, one should attempt to follow the middle way and strike a balance between the 2. One must also follow the Eightfold Path, areas of life in which one must explore to clear their mind, made up by the following: the right view, the right intention, the right action, right speech, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Other things Buddhists must do to achieve their 4 goals are following the precepts consistent with the monastic way of life, following the paths of bodhisattva, and developing wisdom and compassion. A religious experience is something that happens to an individual that is interpreted by them under the pretense of their religion. Usually, the experiencer deduces that there is some sort of an encounter with a god or some sort of higher being. There are 4 characteristics which define a religious experience, which were created by William James in the 19th century. These characteristics are: it is transient, meaning that the experience is only temporary and the individual will return to a state of mind in which is considered normal after it is over. The experience will be ineffable, meaning that the person will not be able to put it into words in a way that would be described in its entirety. It will be noetic, meaning that the person will have gained knowledge from the experience that is typically beyond human understanding. And finally, it will be passive, meaning that the experience will happen without the person's control, and exercises to make the religious experiences occur, such as meditation, will not succeed 100% in allowing them to happen. There is no concrete answer as to what makes a religious experience religious. If a person is to experience something they deem to be unanswerable by any human explanation, they may define it to be religious or divine in nature. Nakayama's religious experience in the first awakening story gives a real-life example of a religious experience when she finds the meaning of Mu through her constant meditation and contemplation of the koan. That heaven or earth are one, and the universe, Buddha, and she were all one and the same. Religious experiences are not reserved for just those who are devout to their religion. Anyone can use it as an explanation for the unknown.